welcome to your reading. This is going to be your Geoscope for the upcoming lunar eclipse in Capricorn, which happens on the 5th of July 2020. So without wasting any time, let's get into your reading. So just to say that this reading should probably be watched in conjunction with the solar eclipse in Cancer reading that I did a couple of weeks ago, because for me eclipses are connected. So we usually have a solar eclipse which begins a new 6-month cycle, and then that is followed by a corresponding lunar eclipse which tends to be closing out energy or patterns or issues that are kind of left over from the previous cycle. Or they can simply be about what we need to release in order to really welcome in the new energies that the solar eclipse tends to catalyze for us. So I have also done a video on my IGTV channel, and that focuses on more of the astrology, so the more the kind of cosmic weather of this particular pair of eclipses, which are in fact the last pair in Cancer and Capricorn before we move fully into the energy of the new nodal axis, which is in Gemini and Sagittarius. So we had a taste of that in early June when we had the first lunar eclipse in Sagittarius, and that energy will continue when we start a new set of eclipses in November, December. But for now, let's focus on what the Cancer Capricorn full moon lunar eclipse has to say for you. Right, I think that's shuffled enough. Right, so opening your reading is Populace. Now this is really interesting, Aquarius, because you are a very kind of social or group-oriented sign. So it's interesting that we've got Populace, which is the geomantic symbol that's most associated with group endeavors or kind of group energy in your first house. This is traditionally associated with the moon in Cancer. Now it's interesting because at this particular eclipse we have the moon in Capricorn. So this is the opposite position to where the moon feels at home. So this is actually where the moon is detrimented. And so it's interesting that your kind of aim or your sort of focus, what you'd like to sort of bring in at this particular full moon eclipse, is the more of the energy of the solar eclipse. So this is where the sun and the moon were both at the solar eclipse at the solstice, so on the 21st of June. So you've really got that in mind, I think, as we move into this lunar eclipse energy. You're very focused on what you want to, what's positive, what you want to start, rather than what you want to finish. So this is your fourth house of kind of roots, family and belonging, and it's interesting, we've got another card, geomantic card, that's associated with the moon in Cancer. Now you know, as I say, the moon will not be in Cancer, it will be in Capricorn. So this is very interesting. It's sort of like you're really stubbornly focused on this kind of moon in Cancer energy, this solstice sort of lunar eclipse. So the geomantic figure of Via is about travel, and it's usually about progression. So on some level you may be deciding that you want to relocate. Perhaps you're wanting to sort of settle somewhere else, and so that's why we've got this idea of travel in your fourth house of home. You may be relocating, and this also may be why we've got Populace here. You know, it could be that you're wanting to sort of start fresh in a new culture, that you don't feel that you belong in the sort of country or the place where you currently live, and that you're very focused on finding your soul tribe, and that this may involve some kind of trip or relocation. Wow. So Populace again, really emphasizing this need for belonging in terms of the group. Very, very interesting energy. So to me this kind of harks back a little bit to that Aquarius, I think it was the full moon or the new moon that we had back in February, where you know, there was this major emphasis on trying to find your soul tribe. Now this is the 7th house of committed partnerships and significant others. So on some level, yes, you really seem very, very focused on finding your soul mates, your soul tribes, where you feel that you belong. And if that means moving or relocating, you're okay with that. So that's, I think, the kind of gist of what I'm seeing there. Interesting. So this is 10th house. This is where you're kind of headed. This is your career. This is your kind of public face or persona. And here we've got Rubeus. Now this energy is Scorpio energy. It's Mars in Scorpio. So it's Mars in its traditional night rulership position in the sign of Scorpio. So this is water energy. It's interesting. All of your geomantic figures are actually water. Very, very strong emphasis on water energy here. Now you're an air sign, Aquarius. So the kind of watery domain of emotions and sort of touchy-feely stuff is not really something that you feel comes naturally to you. It's something you really have to kind of cultivate. So it's interesting that we've got, this really sort of strong emphasis on water energy, which is all about emotions, intuition, and the realm of of connection, really, to other people. So this is a passionate energy, though. So this is kind of the energy of underground water. So it's about passion. It's about being fierce. It's about being sort of very focused, almost, in terms of the way that you kind of use this energy. And I do seem to remember that in your geomantic reading for the solar eclipse that Rubeus also kind of came up, and I think it also had to do with potentially with work or career. So it could be that matters now are kind of coming to a head, and this is what needs to be cleared in order for you to move into the new energy that you're so focused on in terms of the solar eclipse. But I think, before I say any more, I need to do the conversions for the rest of your figures so that we can see what else is happening in your chart. Hi Aquarius, welcome back to your reading. So as you can see, I've done all the conversions and I have popped the cards into their respective houses. Now the first thing I want to say about this particular reading is that I've never had so many Rubeus being repeated. I think it's about 5 times in your whole reading. So this reading really is about passion. Now it could be about finding your passion or purpose, because we've got it in the 10th house, but it can also be about mastering emotions that are perhaps destructive or excessive, where you become a little bit OCD, where you perhaps become a little bit obsessive, or kind of where something can almost take on a kind of toxic dimension, and where we kind of feel that we want to sort of control something. So it can be, as I say, about OCD kind of, control issues. But I mean, we've got it in the 10th house, we've got it in the 11th house, we've got it in your 2nd house, your 6th house, and your 8th house. So whatever the situation is, I really feel as though this particular lunar eclipse for you is going to be about identifying whatever it is that is causing this inflammation, I want to say, in your psyche, so that it can be cleared and you can kind of move past it and get into more of a balanced place. Now it's interesting because Scorpio itself is about catharsis on some level. So this may be what needs to happen, almost like a sort of an abscess that kind of gets, very inflamed, or a volcano, and then at some point it has to kind of erupt or be, lanced, so that the pus can kind of come out, or the build-up of these sort of very strong emotions you can let off steam, basically. That's what I'm seeing. So let's look at that in context to the lunar eclipse itself, which is all about balance. So for you, the lunar eclipse happens in your 12th house. Now I find this very interesting, given that we are talking a lot about emotions. So the 12th house is the house of our psyche. So this is the unconscious mind, it's our subconscious drives, it's the beliefs that we hold at a very at sort of often below verbal kind of level, a pre-verbal level, and so they can be very difficult to eradicate, if they are not working for us, if they are self-destructive in some way. So I really think that, given that the moon is going to be in the 12th house, that it does look as if for you there's some kind of psychological catharsis or psychic clearing that needs to happen. Now the sun will be in the opposite sign of, this is the 6th house, so this is where Cancer will be. So this is Capricorn, this is Cancer. And it's interesting that we've got Rubeus here. So this is the mind-body connection. And as I said, Rubeus can sometimes be about inflammation. This is the Latin word for the color red. So it is very often to do with, you know, this inflamed kind of feeling. Now, the sun, generally speaking, is about our conscious mind, whereas this is about our unconscious mind. So I kind of feel as though the eclipse is really drawing your attention to unconscious dynamics that may be playing out in your life, possibly, you know, almost being mirrored in the kind of 3D world. And that if you can, you know, come back into balance within your psyche, within your energetic system, then, you know, these matters will probably either disappear or resolve themselves in the external world. But, you know, where are they likely to show up for you? Certainly when it comes to friendships and social connections, when it comes to money and the sort of income inflow of physical possessions. It can also show up in shared possessions and assets. So these can be physical, these can be sort of shared, like a property that you co-own with a significant other, but it can also be about immaterial resources like trust, intimacy, and so on. So those are the main areas where I feel as though there are issues. So it's interesting, we've got the 2nd and the 8th house axis activated. So this is about, as I say, it's possessions, it's our own resources versus those that we share and communally with others, and these are usually one other person. And then this is also a kind of communal house. This is the 11th house of friendships, social groupings, and belonging. So this is kind of it's also to an extent about our hopes and desires, and sometimes our fears. So given that we've got Rubeus in the 10th house, you know, possibly you know, you want to kind of find your passion, and you feel as though perhaps your career or what you're doing for a living in terms of work is not really panning out. Perhaps it's bringing you a lot of stress. You know, that could be another way that this energy can work, making it difficult to switch off, for example. It may also be that whoever you are in business or kind of work with, you know, here it could be sort of group, so it could be somebody like a friend that you're in business with, but it could be that whatever the grouping is within the work environment is quite toxic, and that you know, any project that involves team effort, for example, where you're not kind of getting the fair share of the credit, or where there's been a sort of a joint collaboration or kind of group collaboration on something, but you don't feel as though you are getting the acknowledgement or the financial benefits that you feel are yours, that you deserve, which could be why we've got, you know, this emphasis on 2nd and 8th. So that may be the 3D situation that's playing out, but I think really what the moon and the sun are highlighting for you at this eclipse are that there's an important shift that needs to happen in terms of your energetic system, your psyche, your beliefs, and that this may automatically fix some of these issues that are kind of cropping up. So if we think about the moon for a minute, this is the moon in Capricorn. At the lunar eclipse, we're going to have quite a few planets and chart points and fixed stars being highlighted in the sign of Capricorn. So we've got the moon, which we will be making a conjunction to the fixed star Vega. That may be important. I have written quite extensively about this particular fixed star in my January 2019 eclipse forecast called the Song of Orpheus. So you may want to read that if you are a member of my website, and if you're not, then do go and subscribe, because it's free and it will give you access to my library of previous eclipses. So that may be important. Then the other thing to say is that Jupiter and Pluto will also be in the sign of Capricorn, and they will be fresh from their conjunction in Capricorn that happened on the 30th of June. So only a couple of days after, or sort of before, this particular eclipse. So the energy will still be fresh. These are slow moving planets. They'll still be in orb. So that for me says that, you know, a major reset for you internally is possible now. And it, I think that this reset has to do with not just kind of buried difficult emotions like anger, resentment, jealousy, obsession, but it could also have something to do with abuse. That is certainly a possibility on some level, and this doesn't have to be physical abuse. It can be psychological abuse, it can be abuse via money, it can be abuse in terms of like narcissistic type of dynamics within the workplace with a colleague, for example. There's lots of ways that energy can work. It's also manipulation on another level, and that is usually about trying to get your needs met, but without actually asking or stating what those needs are. So it's a kind of a dishonest way of getting your needs met. So I really feel as though here you are kind of almost opening to the collective energy that is happening at this solar lunar event, because it is a collective happening. The moon does tend to sort of plug us into the collective psyche, the sort of collective unconscious almost. And I feel as though there's some kind of wisdom that could be had that could help you to make this transition. And these may have to do with some kind of myth, a myth or an archetype that could be really useful or help you to alchemize this energy so that you are able to use it in a kind of constructive way, and to release whatever this toxic energy is, or this toxic belief that will really help you to rid yourself of this kind of energy in your life. So that's one thing that I think we need to sort of emphasize. The other thing, of course, is that the moon will also be making a trine to Uranus. Now, of course, this is your ruling planet, and Uranus is currently touring through Aquarius. So for you, Aquarius, it's touring through Taurus. So for you, that kind of sits in your 4th house, I think. Yes, your 4th house. Now, it's interesting that we've got this energy of Via here, which is echoed in your 3rd house too. 3rd house can be local travel or transport, and we've got it here in your 4th house too. So it looks as though for some reason you are moving about or traveling either within your local vicinity or local sort of neighborhood, or perhaps you are relocating, or you're thinking or talking about relocating, which is why we've got it in the 3rd house. So this can be siblings and close relatives. It can also be what's on our mind, what we're communicating about. It's our communication style. It can be back and forth messages. It can be documentation. It's interesting that we've got these in both these houses. So perhaps the key for you to making a shift is has something to do with this kind of forward movement. So I'm just going to read you the keywords for Via, because they can represent travel, but they can also just represent something is slightly less literal. So Via is about roads, travel, journeys, flux, directed movement, and a change of direction. So that's really interesting. So as I say, I do feel as though this is a kind of pivotal moment for you, this eclipse, in terms of pivoting psychologically. Now it's interesting, as I say, that we've got Via here, and if you have a look at the two geomantic symbols, they're almost the opposite of each other. This is all even dots, and this is all odd dots. So they are almost kind of opposites to each other. So it may be on some level that you need to either be open to this idea of change, or of actually pivoting or changing direction, or physically traveling. And if you do relocate, I suppose it does potentially mean new friends, new job, and a change when it comes to you know, the way that you sort of earn money, or your physical possessions, you know, what you sort of take with you and what you don't. So it may be a little trip that is kind of, you know, on the cards, but it could equally be that there's a journey of the mind that needs to sort of take place in order for you to move out of this quite egotistical energy, because this is the sun, and into something that is a bit more in line with humanity, you know. So seeing where you are similar to other people, where the things that we share with others, these kind of common shared experiences, emotions, that kind of thing, you know. And one of the things about Aquarius is that sometimes they can be a little bit too focused on where they are different, where they don't fit in, or where they feel like they're sort of a bit strange or other than the group or the herd. So I think, you know, here you need to also see where you are similar to the herd, where you are human like other people, and that's why we've got Populus echoed in your 7th house of relationships. So kind of almost claiming your humanity, not feeling so cut off from everybody else, and that may help to ease any sort of potential power struggles that you might be having when it comes to, you know, these areas of your life. So yes, very, very interesting reading. Now, if we go to your outcome, we've got Puella, which is about harmony in relationships. It's about romantic success. It's about all those Libran qualities, you know, equilibrium, compromise, peace, etc. And then we've got Tristia, which is, interestingly, Capricorn, Saturn in the sign of Aquarius. So this may be significant. It may indicate, it might kind of give you a time indication. Currently, well, in fact, just before this eclipse, Saturn will retrograde back into Capricorn. So it will leave the sign of Aquarius for a couple of months, I think until around about December. So it may be that, you know, this energy is kind of, you needing to sort of wrap a few things up possibly that relate to Saturn's tour through Capricorn, you know, over the last few years, so that you're kind of ready for Saturn's ingress back into your sign of Aquarius, you know, come December. That may be a kind of a pivotal time for you. It's interesting that we've got Tristia echoed here in your 9th house, which is the house of foreign connections, but also of your kind of philosophical outlook, your principles, the law, but it's mainly to do with your relationship to the divine, to source, to spirit. So I think maybe what it's saying is pivot mentally, you know, into a place of peace and harmony with others, by realizing, kind of releasing what is kind of bringing you a lot of grief, which is focusing very much on sort of like 3D stuff and kind of power struggles and like ego stuff. Realize that this is transient, because Amisio is about what is transient, and focus instead on what is eternal. So this is kind of spiritual stuff, you know, our connection, our humanity, and that in kind of doing so, you will kind of come into a place where you feel you belong, where you commune with others, this important need for belonging with your kind of your soul people, your soul mates, your soul tribe, and where you won't feel like such an outsider, you know. And that might really, that internal shift may be just what is needed to take you out of this place of you know, inflammation and obsession and negative thinking, and sort of really difficult power struggle dynamics with other people, in order to sort of you know, find peace really, and this really all important sense of belonging. So not an easy reading, Aquarius, but I really do feel as though this is pivotal energy. So it's worth bearing in mind that it only lasts for 2 weeks, from the full moon and then through the waning moon cycle to the following new moon. So it's not it's quite short-lived energy. So I kind of feel as though, you know, if you can just get this right, if you can just do this pivot and then kind of purge yourself of this negativity, then you really are in a position to take in the energy of the solar eclipse, this new 6-month cycle that started for you at the 21st of June, you know, at that solar eclipse in Cancer. So, you know, I think a good thing to do would be to look at this reading in conjunction with my previous reading, my previous geoscope for that solstice eclipse. See the two as being connected, look for the overlaps, and then, you know, just really see this as a kind of short-term purging that needs to happen so that you're ready to really take in that wonderful solstice energy that we had back in June. So I hope it's been helpful. Do let me know in the comments if it's resonated. And if you've enjoyed this reading, please do like, subscribe, and share these videos. And I look forward to doing my next reading for you in a couple of weeks.